And viewers, US President Donald Trump has stated at the World Economic Forum in Davos that both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky want to make a deal. Trump also announced that he would meet with Zelensky later today to discuss the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Trump's comments indicate a potential opening for diplomatic efforts to resolve the ongoing war. Let's in fact listen in to what he had to say.
Ukraine and Russia lost just tremendous amounts. And I'm dealing with President Putin, and he wants to make a deal, I believe. I'm dealing with President Zelensky, and I think he wants to make a deal. I'm meeting him today.
All right, Peter Cardillo, who's chief economist at Spartan Capitals, now joins us from New York in this discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Cardillo, for joining us. Firstly, how do you react to Trump's address at the World Economic Forum, and then on his remark that both these world leaders want to make a peace deal over the Ukraine war?
Yeah, well, I think obviously, he gave a long speech and he laid out the reasons why he wants to acquire Greenland. And I suspect that, he basically laid out strategic reasons. And I suspect that over time, this will probably lead to some sort of negotiated deal with the blessings of the EU. And so he made it quite clear that he was not going to use force, but at the same time, he also gave a bit of a threat. He said, if you say yes, we appreciate it. If you say no, we will not forget. And so, he mentioned the Golden Dome and and that certainly would be appealing, I think, for Europe to agree with him. And then, of course, there's another factor, probably, which is the broader objective, is to obtain the earth minerals. Greenland has earth minerals. So I think, that some sort of negotiated deal will probably happen. Yes, of course, it's going to be with probably more threats and Europe playing hardball, but I think at the end there will be a negotiated deal.
All right, sure. Mr. Cardillo, do stay on with us as we proceed. Viewers, Donald Trump has also declared America the world's economic engine while sharply criticizing Europe's direction. Speaking at the forum in Davos, Trump said, when the US economy boosts, the world economy follows. He warned that parts of Europe are no longer responsible and said the continent is not headed in the right direction. His remarks come as US allies push back against Washington's bid to seize Greenland, a key issue dominating Davos discussions. Trump also blamed former President Joe Biden and his allies for damaging the US economy. He said inflation surged to record levels under the Biden administration, with gasoline prices rising rapidly. Trump defended his own economic record and said strong leadership is needed to restore growth and prosperity. Hear those statements for yourself.
After 12 months back in the White House, our economy is booming, growth is exploding, productivity is surging, investment is soaring, incomes are rising, inflation has been defeated, our previously open and dangerous border is closed and virtually impenetrable, and the United States is in the midst of the fastest and most dramatic economic turnaround in our country's history. The USA is the economic engine on the planet, and when America booms, the entire world booms. It's been the history. When it goes bad, it goes bad. You all follow us down, and you follow us up, and we're at a point that I don't believe we've ever been. I never thought we could do it this quickly.
All right, I would now request Mr. Cardillo to join us back in the discussion here with his first comments on Trump's statements about US economy. Of course, he has attacked Joe Biden time and again in his address. And it is also evident that the US economy has done better in this first year of Trump 2.0. But would you say it's mostly because of Trump's policies, or was it a natural course?
Well, to begin with, he is right about the U.S. being the economic engine of the world. It has been since the post-war, and of course, he basically said that when America does well, the rest of the world does well, and when America doesn't do well, the rest of the world doesn't do well. It reminds me of an old saying here in the States that when the United States catches a cold, the rest of the world gets pneumonia. So from that perspective, I think he's right. Yes, he pointed out a very rosy picture for the U.S. economy. I don't really totally agree with that. The economy is growing, but it is growing in a K-shaped growth pattern, which means that a very selective few are really enjoying the fruits of the economic expansion. In terms of inflation, well, inflation has come down, but that began to come down under the previous administration as well. And we still have high levels of inflation. We have sticky inflation. And so, it's a rosy picture. We'll just have to wait and see if 5% GDP growth is obtainable.
All right. Mr. Cardillo, would you say that the tariffs that Trump has enforced on countries across the world, and some that he's about to enforce, do you think those have been able to address the trade imbalances that he was speaking about before he put those tariffs into effect?
With reference to the tariffs, the American consumer is bearing the cost of the tariffs, and that's the reason why we have sticky inflation. In other parts of the world, that's not really happening. Do I think he'll be able to impose higher tariffs without creating some sort of an economic setback? I don't think so. I think it'd be damaging. Certainly, it would mean probably even higher inflation here in the States, and it certainly would wreck the global economies.
All right. Mr. Cardillo, do continue to stay on with us, please. We move ahead, viewers. Let's also tell you what Trump said on China. Now, during his address, Trump stated the U.S. is far ahead of China in artificial intelligence development. Trump attributed U.S. success to policies that allow tech companies to generate their own power, avoiding an energy crisis. He defended nuclear energy, describing it as safe and cost-effective, while criticizing Europe's renewable energy policies for causing higher energy costs and lower output. Trump also questioned China's renewable energy commitment, pointing out the country's reliance on fossil fuels like coal and a growing interest in nuclear energy. I would now want to invite Andrew Latham in this discussion. He's an international affairs expert and joins us from Minneapolis. Andrew, thanks very much for joining me. Firstly, how do you view Trump's Davos address, and particularly on his energy stance vis-a-vis China?
Well, he was talking to two different audiences or constituencies. One was domestic, in which he played up how wonderful the American economy has performed under his leadership. Again, somewhat overstated and a bit twisted, but that was going to play well with his base. And then the other audience, of course, was the NATO allies specifically, but also the international community. I think he tried to sound a somewhat conciliatory note initially with respect to Greenland, for example, but then, of course, he ramped up his his potted history of American involvement in NATO and especially with respect to Greenland. Again, partly true, but for the purpose of saying, look, I'm not backing down. With respect to energy, he's not incorrect. The Europeans, during that unipolar post-Cold War era when it looked like peace was on the horizon in perpetuity, decided they were going to link their economies to Russian oil and gas. And when the war in Ukraine broke out, that obviously turned out to be a really, really bad decision, and it left Europeans vulnerable. They're still purchasing Russian oil and gas. So he's not wrong when he says that the Europeans turning off their nuclear facilities left them vulnerable to Russian pressure. That's not incorrect. He's also not incorrect with respect to China. China has largely dominates the green technology marketplace around the world, producing some vast majority of solar panels and controlling the critical minerals supply chain that makes those technologies possible. And that gives China both economic leverage, but also geopolitical, diplomatic leverage as well. And he's quite right that in China they're putting one or two coal-powered plants in operation every week or month. They have not gone the green route with respect to cars somewhat, but their broader economy is very dependent on oil, gas, and coal, and not so much on green technologies. So, the old adage, a broken clock is right twice a day, and President Trump was right with respect to certain claims. He exaggerated others, he distorted some, and I think some of his claims were simply, they missed the mark, if I can put it charitably.
Andrew, and how do you assess the fact that the European Union has frozen the trade deal with the United States right after Trump's Davos address?
Well, not surprising. We'll see how long that lasts. President Trump puts tariffs in one day and he lowers them the next day and removes them the day after and then raises them again. The Europeans are not entirely dependent upon the American market. They've just signed a free trade deal with India, for example. So they have other outlets, but the American market, both in terms of supply and in terms of a market that they can sell into, is very important, as are U.S. treasuries, for example, which they are very dependent on and cannot just simply get rid of, as one of the threats was. So in the aftermath of everything that's been going on with Trump, this back and forth sort of negotiating, if I can call it that, it's hardly surprising that the Europeans have upped the ante a little bit. What remains to be seen is how much pain this will inflict on Europeans, how it's going to affect domestic politics in countries like France and Germany and the UK, especially in those countries where there is an active right-of-center political movement that's gaining momentum. And it remains to be seen if these sanctions can actually be implemented over the medium to long term. But hardly surprising as a gesture, given where Euro-American relations are at the moment.
Sure. I'd also now like a comment from Mr. Cardillo on the frozen European Union-US trade deal, and where do you think, Mr. Cardillo, that's going to take the transatlantic relations from here?
Well, I think for now they remain rocky, but going forward, I think that they will smooth out. They will smooth out. The fact that the EU put their trade deal on ice for now, I think it's just political rhetoric at this time. I don't think that that's going to be long lasting. So, it's going to, like I said before, it's going to be back and forth. There'll be a lot of political rhetoric on both sides, from the United States and from Europe. And at the end, some sort of a deal will be worked out.
All right, sure. Please to stay on with us once again, Mr. Cardillo and Andrew Latham. Viewers, let's also tell you that during the hour-long speech at Davos, the U.S. President once again reiterated its